I had an interesting text conversation today, or at least a messaging conversation through Facebook, and it started from a simple post I'd made. I guess the day was filled with lots of writing and contemplation, and I happened to jump onto Facebook and I wrote, "There will be suffering for as long as the belief endures that each mind and heart cannot be unified with the Creator." And what happened from that conversation, or from that post, was this question around Creator and the use of the word Creator versus the use of the word God. And before I get into that, I just wanted to explore what I meant by that statement, because it's really important. At least it's important to the perspective I have. And the perspective that is alive within my experience is related to Buddhism, and the idea that I was taught and I was shown in the practice of Buddhism a belief that life is suffering, that there is always suffering. And I had a realization of that doesn't have to be my truth. And I believe that I'd associated this idea with suffering and the monkly life and the renunciation and the giving up of all of the worldly pleasures, because we would always be suffering. And obviously it's much deeper than that. But as I got into this idea, and I realized, oh, well, there's only going to be suffering for as long as we forget that we're one. And what does that mean? Well, there's only going to be suffering for as long as I cannot perceive through the heart and the mind. I cannot perceive oneness. I cannot feel oneness with you, feel oneness with everyone that I witness, everyone that I see. If I can't feel that, then I'll suffer. But in feeling that, in feeling oneness with you, in feeling oneness with everyone, and I mean everyone that I look upon, in feeling that oneness through my heart, through my mind, I'll be unified with the Creator. So that was that particular post. Now, sometimes when I post, I've used words like Spirit, God, Creator, and there can be other terms like all that is. Loving benevolent force. I mean, there's lots of beautiful labels. And what happened was then a question was posed that led to this conversation. And this is a paraphrase because I don't have an eidetic memory. I don't remember exactly what was said, but it runs along the lines of, well, how do you choose, or how do you feel about using God versus Creator? Why would you use one over the other? And what surfaced for me was a question in return, because what I was curious about was my own belief system. And so in being asked about, well, what would I use, God or Creator, I didn't feel drawn to focus on either word being the preference, but what I had in my mind was this sense that Spirit was basically reminding me that, well, there is an emotional guidance system. And the emotional guidance system, well, if we weren't separated, we wouldn't even have emotions. So we're in this state of separation in a physical body. We've incarnated and we've had to forget so that we can go through this journey of learning how to align with love and learning how to remember again that we're all one. So we have to forget, otherwise how would we have this experience to remember? And as a part of the forgetting, and the part of separation, the part of incarnation, we have emotions. But so beautifully woven within that idea of emotions is what Abraham Hicks has called the emotional guidance system. And the emotional guidance system is our map back to God. And as our map back to God, what that informs me of, what I've come to believe, is that when I have a negative feeling, then that is that part of me that is God, self with the capital S, surfacing. And also, as my vibrational frequency elevates, as I raise my consciousness, what is happening is that that which is of lower vibration can no longer remain buried deep in my subconscious. And so it is pushed up, because that's the law of attraction. It is repelled from within me, pushed to the surface. Now this happens emotionally, and the emotional guidance system gives you feedback. This also happens physically. And then signs of awakening include the idea of physical symptoms that surface. And if you keep those physical, or you keep those emotional beliefs or false beliefs deep down for a long, long time, then eventually they'll surface. The body can no longer contain it and they erupt in some form of disease. But emotional guidance system, law of attraction, surfacing these feelings. And so within this conversation and within the answer to this question was then my basically saying, or being inspired to say, well, if the negative emotions are informing me of what we need to see, and if the idea of God or creator or the word God evokes fear, then what is alive in you around this idea of fear when it comes to God? What is it that you believe about the word God or the label God that's associated with fear? And the conversation unfolded, and it was a beautiful conversation, and they shared their fears. They shared that they had a whole bunch of association of how God was associated to religious institutions, that God was dead, God was passé, God was this old idea, it was an anachronism, it was associated with control. And yes, in the past, those individualizations of God who incarnated and knew not what they did, amassed worldly power, worked within the ego mind, within religious institutions, within a collective ego mind, and associated their works with the label of God. And what I could see in the conversation was this person reflecting that story, that his story, her story. And I realized, oh, well, that is just informing. That is the feeling associated with the word God itself. There's nothing good nor bad about it. There's the word creator. There's nothing good nor bad about it. They are just symbols. And so when we see a symbol, when we see an object, and we have a feeling that emerges around it, there's nothing in the object or the symbol that is good or bad. There is our belief associated with it. And if we have a belief that is immersed within us, that is being suppressed because we've had that trained or conditioned or implanted or seeded within us many, many years ago or recently, and we never recognize the oneness of God and love in that moment, then what we allowed ourselves to do was to have that belief fester. And now in this moment it's showing up as we observe the symbol, as we observe the object that triggers the fear. Now we have the opportunity to look at that object, look at that symbol, and ask ourselves, if there's nothing good nor bad in the object, what is it that we fear? And so this is the invitation I offer to you. If you've gotten this far in this video, there's a reason for that. Just as I've gotten up to share this message and stream these thoughts. If you observe an object, or if you observe a symbol, God might be a good place to start, and it evokes or it triggers you in some way. What is that trying to tell you? In other words, what is your emotional reaction trying to tell you? What message is that negative feeling bringing? And then maybe as you explore that in this conversation, they shared all these images of, what had happened in the past and how it had been abused. And then they also shared this belief system of what's going on for them right now, that, their belief is that God is dead and God is passé, and how God was associated with all of these things. So then, well, what does that belief mean to you? And why do you feel badly about that? And then when you explore into that, then you've got your opportunity as you uncover and reveal the message. Now you're lifting this shadow, this toxin, this poison from the ego mind, suppressed in memory, and you're now surfacing, and you've got an opportunity to use memory for what it actually should be used for. See, without memory, we wouldn't be able to have relationships. Okay? Relationships in terms of a sequence of experiences. So now you can use memory to change that belief. And how do you do that? Well, you heal it. How do you heal it? Well, you look at that memory that surfaces and you make a choice. So you strive. You may not feel like you're very good at doing that, but you can ask for help. And you can ask God for help. You can ask God for advice. And you can say, so that event that I observe, I now observe that as though I am, through my heart, observing God, through my mind, through my heart, observing God forgetting that it's God, observing an individualization of God that made a mistake, that didn't know what it was doing, and so I forgive them. Now, the idea of forgiveness, I would say, forgiveness is remembering that we're all one. So when you forgive someone, if it's in history, if it's based on a conditioning, a myth, a story that you didn't even experience, or a combination of myths and stories, and then what you got to experience. Maybe you had some experience of being directly abused. And so what you can do is you can look at that past event that came from asking, what is this message bringing me? And then you can say, and you can feel. And you may close your eyes, you may meditate here, and in this moment, you may set that intention that I strive to observe that person, that event, from a place of oneness, from a knowing of oneness, that I am individualization of love. I am self with a capital S. God is self. Self is God. I am God individualized, observing this individualization of God that forgot, that made a mistake. And much like the famous words, then I can repeat, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And that's forgiveness. And that is bringing the light to the shadow. And then you can pause then and see how you feel, because your emotional guidance system now is going to be informing you still. It's your map back to God. And if you feel a sense of relief, of lightness, of joy, you might even smile. You may even have an exhilaration. You may feel a thrill running of energy up your spine. You may feel a lightness. You may feel a sense of love, a huge burst of happiness and joy. Whatever it is, that is feedback now that you've brought healing to that past memory. You've used memory for what it can actually be. In other words, now you are unlearning the old false belief, and you are having the experience of unlearning so that you can now relearn and remember the oneness. The oneness. And so, back to that original post, there will be suffering for as long as the belief endures that each mind and each heart cannot be unified with the Creator. That means each mind, each heart, your mind, your heart being unified with the Creator. And the mind and the heart in particular, because that's where we're connected. That's where love sits. So feel in your heart love and oneness. Feel in the heart of the one that you're thinking about, love and oneness. Remembering that we're all one. There is forgiveness. There is the light brought to the shadow. There is the healing. And your emotional guidance system, you're feeling, if you're feeling it elevated, that's the best feedback that you can have. I love and I bless you.